Owen Hart was 17 when his stepfather told him to leave. The words came on a Tuesday morning in early March, delivered with the casual cruelty of a man who had spent 18 months building resentment in silence. Owen's mother had died when he was 8. His stepfather had married into custody, and for years the arrangement had been tolerable. But as Owen got older, as he became a more visible reminder of a dead woman, the tolerance had evaporated. "You're 18 next month," the man said, standing in the kitchen with his coffee mug. "I think it's time you figured things out for yourself. There are shelters, programs. The state has resources." Owen left that day. He took a backpack, a few changes of clothes, and the deed to a property in Colorado that his biological father had apparently left him. The deed had been held in an estate account managed by a law office in Manitou Springs. A paralegal had sent notice on his 18th birthday. The property was described as uninhabitable and of nominal value. A burnt-out Glassworks factory on the edge of Ute Pass, a relic of the 19th century. Owen took a bus north into Colorado, hitchhiked into the mountains, and found himself standing on a wet March morning before a massive structure of blackened brick and shattered glass. The building stretched across what must have once been a sprawling factory complex. Windows were hollow sockets. Walls leaned at awkward angles. The roof had collapsed in several places, exposing the interior to the gray Colorado sky. The entire thing smelled of ash and water damage and decades of neglect. A hand-painted sign was barely visible on the north wall. Hartwell Glassworks, established 1881. Owen pushed open a twisted iron door and stepped inside. The interior was a cathedral of decay. Massive furnaces, still standing but cracked and cold, loomed in the central chamber. Wooden workbenches had rotted to skeletal frames. The floor was a mix of ash, broken glass, and water-stained wood. Sunlight streamed through the destroyed roof, illuminating clouds of dust suspended in the air. At the center of the ruined factory floor, beneath a partially collapsed roof section, sat a wooden desk. It seemed impossible that it had survived. The surface was warped and discolored by water damage, but it was intact. Beside it was a chair, also improbably whole. Owen approached. On the desk lay a leather journal, swollen with moisture, its pages brittle and darkened. The journal's cover bore a name in gold lettering: Silas Hartwell, 1952. Owen opened it carefully. The first entry was dated August 1952, written in careful, precise handwriting. "I have abandoned the Glassworks business. It is no longer viable, no longer aligned with my true purpose. The furnaces will remain cold. The workers have been released. The building is mine alone now. I am beginning the true work, the work my grandfather started and could not complete. The work that will change everything. Deep beneath this factory, in the clay-lined chambers my family has maintained for 70 years, the real research continues." Owen read for hours, seated on the rotting floor of the burnt factory, reading journal entries that spanned decades. His biological father, Silas Hartwell, had not been a factory owner. He had been a scientist, a researcher, someone obsessed with a discovery that had consumed his entire life. The entries detailed the development of bioluminescent glass, not the theoretical kind, but actual functional panels that glowed with intrinsic light generated by complex biological mechanisms embedded in the glass structure itself. Silas had inherited the Glassworks from his grandfather, a man named Cornelius Hartwell, who had begun the research in 1882, right after the factory's founding. For 70 years, Cornelius had experimented in secret, developing techniques to embed living biological systems into glass matrices. When Silas inherited the business, he had continued the work, driven by the belief that bioluminescent glass could revolutionize lighting, medicine, information technology, almost every aspect of human life. But the research had been too advanced, too unconventional. The university that employed him briefly had deemed the work speculative and without commercial application. Funding dried up, academic credibility evaporated, so Silas had quit, closed the Glassworks to the world, and dedicated himself entirely to the underground research. There were detailed sketches in the journal, designs for panels, diagrams showing biological cultures embedded in glass, calculations for light output and efficiency. There were notes about failed experiments, breakthroughs, setbacks, small victories. There were also personal reflections. Silas had written about his marriage, about the son he'd had, Owen's father, about the choice to leave the child with his mother because the research demanded everything, because love and obsession could not coexist in the same space. The final entry was dated 1989, written in shakier handwriting. The work is complete. The glass panels are stable. The light output exceeds expectations. What I have created here, in the chambers beneath this burnt ruin, could illuminate cities without electrical power. It could provide light to places where darkness has always ruled. It could change medicine, agriculture, human settlement patterns. But I am not the one to bring this forward. I am an old man with a lifetime consumed by obsession. I leave this behind, encrypted in this journal and hidden in the chambers below. If someone comes, if the work finds a successor, they will understand. They will see the potential. They will complete what I could not. Owen descended into the burnt factory's foundation that afternoon. He found the entrance to the chambers, a stone staircase leading down into darkness, hidden behind a collapsed furnace section. As he descended, the temperature changed. The air became cooler, drier, more stable. The chamber was vast. The walls were lined with stone and clay, clearly reinforced over a century of careful construction. And lining the shelves, protected in cases and on display stands, were panels of glass that glowed. Not dimly, not faintly. The glass panels emitted a steady, beautiful light. Soft cyan and green hues, glowing with a luminescence that seemed to come from within the material itself. Some panels pulsed gently. Others maintained a steady glow. The light illuminated the chamber with an ethereal quality that made Owen feel like he was standing inside a dream. He counted 47 panels in various stages of completion and preservation. Each one was labeled with a date, a designation, notes about the biological integration process. The earliest panels were from 1947. The most recent was from 1985. All of them still glowed. All of them still functioned after decades of being sealed in the darkness of the underground chamber. There was a workbench, tools, equipment designed for glass manipulation. There were notebooks filled with detailed instructions for maintaining the panels, for understanding the biological processes that generated the light, for protecting the delicate integration of living systems and glass. Owen touched one of the glowing panels. The surface was warm. The light was real. He understood then that his entire life, the abandonment by his father, the years in his mother's house, the rejection by his stepfather, the loss and loneliness and displacement, had been leading him to this moment. He had inherited not a worthless burnt shell of a building, but a lifetime of brilliant, obsessive research. He had been left a legacy wrapped in failure and hidden beneath ash. He spent 3 days in the chamber, reading every notebook, understanding the techniques, learning the science of bioluminescent glass integration. And then he made a choice. He would find Dr. Catherine Hartwell. Catherine was Silas's daughter, Owen's aunt, born in 1975, when Silas was already consumed by his research. She had become a molecular biologist, had earned a PhD from Stanford, had worked for several biotechnology companies before co-founding a startup called Lumitech Solutions. Owen found her through a simple web search. She was alive. She was a scientist. She had never known about the hidden research in the Colorado Glassworks. Owen called her. "I'm your nephew," he said. "I have something your father left behind. I think you need to see it." Catherine arrived 3 days later. She was a woman in her early 50s, professional and sharp. But when Owen showed her the glowing panels, when he handed her the journals, when he walked her through the technology that her father had spent 40 years developing, something broke open inside her. "This should have been published," she said, her voice tight. "This should have been shared. This could have changed the world decades ago." Why did he hide it? He couldn't get funding, Owen said. The institutions didn't believe in it. Catherine read her father's final journal entry several times. Then she called her network, a molecular biologist from Stanford, a glass materials specialist from MIT, a lighting engineer from Germany. Within a week, 3 scientists had visited the chamber and verified the work. Within 2 weeks, the story had leaked to a science journalist. The attention brought complications. Marcus Finch arrived in a black SUV with lawyers and a proposal. He represented Bioluminescent Industries, a company that specialized in lighting technology. They had been searching for advanced biointegration glass patents for years. They had significant funding, substantial laboratory infrastructure, and the connections to bring the technology to market. "We'll provide $50 million in funding, access to cutting-edge research facilities, and a path to commercialization," Finch said, presenting documents across a table in the Glassworks main office, the burnt walls around them like a frame for his proposal. "We simply need the rights to the technology. The panels, the research, everything. This could generate billions. You could all become wealthy. Your father's work would finally reach the world." Owen was 17. He was homeless. He was looking at a number that represented everything he didn't have. But Catherine was looking at her father's journals. She was thinking about institutional knowledge, about academic freedom, about the difference between owning a discovery and controlling it entirely. "No," she said. "I'm sorry?" Finch's expression didn't change. "No," Catherine repeated. "My father didn't hide this work because he wanted it to be proprietary. He hid it because he was ahead of his time. Now that the world is ready, we're not selling it to a company that will lock it behind patents and proprietary manufacturing agreements." What followed was exactly what Owen had learned from reading his grandfather's journals. Conflict with people who wanted to own the discovery. Finch's company filed patent claims, arguing that the location of the research made the work unprotected intellectual property available for commercialization. Environmental agencies got involved because the factory site was adjacent to protected land. Conservationists became concerned about the Glassworks' historical significance. A documentary crew wanted access to tell the story of the hidden research. The legal battle lasted 8 months. Catherine hired lawyers. Owen gave interviews to journalists about his inheritance, his homelessness, his displacement. The story caught fire on social media. The Glassworks became a symbol of scientific suppression and corporate greed. Bioluminescent Industries withdrew their claim. Instead, a partnership formed. The University of Colorado Boulder, the National Science Foundation, and an international consortium of researchers established the Hartwell Research Initiative. The Glassworks was designated a historical site and active research facility. Catherine became the director of research. Owen was enrolled in the university's accelerated program, studying molecular biology and material science. The bioluminescent glass panels were documented, analyzed, preserved. The research was published in Nature, in Science, in every major peer-reviewed journal. Silas Hartwell's name became known. The work that he had hidden for 40 years became foundational to a new field of biointegrated materials. And Owen, the 17-year-old who had been kicked out of his home and left with a burnt-out factory, found himself at the center of the discovery. He learned the science his grandfather had pioneered. He understood the techniques. He stood in the glowing chamber beneath the ruins of the Glassworks and realized that his entire inheritance was not the building, not the panels, not even the research itself. His inheritance was the discovery that the things abandoned by the world, the burnt buildings, the discredited scientists, the foster children, and displaced young people, sometimes held the most valuable secrets. The things that seemed worthless on the surface often glowed brightest in the darkness below. The panels still functioned. After more than 30 years sealed in their underground chamber, they still generated their soft, ethereal light. And Owen understood that this was his grandfather's message, that the work was never about commercial value. It was about the stubborn persistence of believing in something true, even when the world said it was worthless. It was about building in the darkness with the faith that someday someone would come and understand. What have you discovered about yourself in the places where the world said you had no value?